Have you ever tilted your head back in a cathedral and actually thought, not admired, not gasped, not photographed for Instagram, but genuinely thought about what you were looking at? Because when you run the numbers, something becomes very clear. What we've been told is physically impossible. Here's the official version. Genius artist, wooden scaffolding, candles for light, brushes loaded with pigment, head tilted back for months, years, sometimes decades, heroic suffering, divine inspiration, history books close, applause, sounds beautiful, sounds human, sounds exactly like the story someone wants you to believe. Now let's turn on critical thinking. Take one candle. A real candle, the kind they actually had. It produces roughly 12 lumens of light. Now raise it to ceiling height 20 meters above the floor, which is standard for a European cathedral or palace hall. Apply the inverse square law, which is just physics, not opinion. At 20 meters, that candle delivers 0.04 lux of illumination to the surface above, 0.04 to work with color, to actually distinguish hues, judge gradients, control brushstrokes. A painter needs a minimum of 500 lux. That's not a preference. That's human biology. Do the math yourself. 500 divided by 0.04. You need 12,500 candles in that room, simultaneously, burning. Now ask yourself one question, not a complicated question, a simple one. Where are the scorch marks? Where is the soot on the very frescoes we're told were painted by candlelight? Where are the contemporary accounts of the fire brigade standing by? Where are the supply records for 12,000 candles per session per day for months? They don't exist. None of them. It's like being told someone welded a skyscraper together using a cigarette lighter. The lighter is real. The skyscraper is real. But the explanation connecting them is an insult to basic logic. Either these works were created with light sources we are deliberately not told about, or the official timeline of when and how they were made is a fabrication. There is no third option. This is not a minor inconsistency. This is not a rounding error in some historian's footnote. This is the foundation of the entire story collapsing under a single calculation that takes 30 seconds to perform, and light, believe it or not, is the least troubling part. Wait until we get to what the human body does when you hold your arms above your head for 8 hours straight. Let's leave the candles for a moment. The light problem alone should end the conversation. But we're just getting started. Do this right now. Raise both arms above your head, straight up, hold them there, don't move. Set a timer. Most people can't last 3 minutes before the discomfort becomes impossible to ignore. The blood drains from your hands, your shoulders begin to burn, your neck locks into a position it was never designed to hold. This isn't weakness. This is basic human anatomy doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now ask yourself, how did they paint for 8 hours a day? Look at the Würzburg residents in Bavaria. The most interesting part is just beginning. Write in the comments what city you're from, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching us from where? Drop a like and subscribe to the channel. There's more to come. Mark yourselves in the comments. Which country are you from? Hit that like button and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Right where you are right now, smash that thumbs up and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us, where are you watching from? Support the video with a like and hit that subscribe button. The climax is near. Share what corner of the world you're in right now. Drop a like and make sure to subscribe. Things are developing rapidly. Write your city in the chat, slam that like and hit subscribe so you don't get lost. All the juiciest stuff is ahead. Let's get acquainted. Who's from where? Hit like and subscribe right now. The intrigue is building right where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and subscription. Emotions are off the charts. Quickly write what city you're from. Drop a fat like and subscribe to the channel. Official version. Giovanni Battista Tiepolo completed its grand ceiling fresco, 677 square meters of continuous painted surface, in just 13 months. That's the story. That's what the plaques say. That's what the tour guides repeat with pride. Let's turn on the calculator and just count. 677 square meters. Subtract rest days, preparation days, plaster setting days. You're left with roughly 150 active painting sessions. Each session, Tiepolo would need to cover approximately 4.5 square meters of finished, detailed, multi-figure composition per day on his back, arms raised, at height, with no corrections possible once the plaster dried. That's not a work day. That's a physical performance that would destroy a professional athlete, let alone a painter in his 50s working by inadequate light on an unstable wooden platform 20 meters above a stone floor. And here's the detail that makes your hair stand up. Tiepolo was 58 years old when he completed this work. 58. In the 18th century, when the average man was considered elderly at 50. Do you seriously believe this? It's like being told an arthritic grandfather ran 6 consecutive marathons back-to-back while simultaneously writing a novel longhand, and we have no training records, no medical accounts, no diary entries describing the suffering, nothing. Just the finished ceiling and a plaque with a name on it. Either Tiepolo possessed a physiology that no human before or since has demonstrated, or someone else created that ceiling using methods we are not being told about. There is no third option. This is not a gap in the historical record. This is the historical record screaming at us. The absence of evidence of struggle, of injury, of physical breakdown, that absence is itself the evidence. But the body is just one problem. The chemistry of what was actually applied to those ceilings tells a story that the art world has spent 2 centuries desperately trying to silence. Shift your gaze from the painter's body to the room itself, because there's a third problem, one that should have ended this conversation before it even began. The air. A sealed cathedral vault at ceiling height is not the same as the floor below. Heat rises, oxygen depletes, carbon dioxide accumulates. This isn't theory. It's the same physics that makes poorly ventilated attics dangerous in summer. Now add the candles. Each burning candle consumes roughly 7 liters of oxygen per hour. We established the lighting requirement earlier, thousands of candles burning simultaneously to achieve working light levels. But even a conservative estimate for a modest work session, say 200 candles actually clustered around the painter on the scaffold, consumes 1,400 liters of oxygen every hour. A human being needs approximately 550 liters per hour to function normally. At that consumption rate, the oxygen concentration at ceiling height drops to dangerous levels in under 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Then the painter begins to feel dizzy, confused, detached. His color judgment, the most critical tool he possesses, collapses first. Do you seriously believe the greatest precision paintings in human history were executed by men who were functionally hypoxic for most of their working day? Because that is the official version, dressed up in the language of genius and sacrifice but reduced to its physical reality. A man running out of air painting masterpieces in the dark. Look at the Church of Sant'Ignazio in Rome. Ceiling fresco by Andrea Pozzo. 530 square meters of trompe-l'oeil architecture so precise that standing in the correct spot on the floor below creates a perfect optical illusion of a dome extending hundreds of meters into the sky. Pozzo completed this between 1691 and 1694, 3 years, mostly alone, in a sealed Baroque vault, by candlelight, lying on scaffolding, running out of oxygen every half hour, and the perspective geometry, we'll get to this properly later because it deserves its own reckoning, is accurate to tolerances that challenge modern architects with laser equipment. It's like being told someone solved a 1,000-piece puzzle while blindfolded underwater with their hands tied. The puzzle exists. It's solved. But the explanation of how is a physical absurdity. Either Pozzo worked with tools and methods that have been erased from the official record, or what we're looking at is not what we're told it is. No third option exists. This is not artistic mystery. This is a crime scene. And we haven't even opened the chemistry report yet. Remember that phrase? The chemistry report. We'll return to it, and when we do, the ground will shift beneath you. Here it is. The chemistry report we promised. And if the light, the body, and the oxygen left you with doubts, what comes next removes them entirely. Take a pigment called Berlin blue. vivid, deep, unmistakable, chemically synthesized for the first time in 1704 by Johann Jakob Diesbach in a Berlin laboratory. That date is not disputed. It's documented, verified, and accepted by every chemist and art historian on the planet. Now look at the frescoes officially dated to 1600 or 1580 or earlier. Berlin blue is in them, not traces, not contamination, consistent deliberate application across entire compositional sections, skies, robes, shadows, exactly where a painter chooses to use a specific pigment. The official explanation, later restoration. We're told that restorers, at some unspecified point in some unspecified century with some unspecified authorization, repainted significant sections using materials that didn't exist when the originals were supposedly created. And somehow, this wholesale repainting left no documentation, no contracts, no records of which sections were touched, nothing. Do you seriously believe this? Berlin blue is not alone. Chrome green, patented in 1809, appears in works dated to the 15th century. Zinc white, an industrial 19th century product, shows up in paintings attributed to Renaissance masters who died 200 years before zinc white existed. Let's turn on the calculator and just count. 3 anachronistic pigments, across dozens of verified sites, each one requiring its own separate _1_ explanation, each restoration undocumented. The probability of this being coincidental contamination approaches 0, not metaphorically, but mathematically. I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, restoration is common. It's well known. Frescoes get touched up constantly. Fine. 1 restoration, plausible. 2, a pattern, but 23 verified sites across 4 countries, all showing chemically impossible pigments, all lacking restoration records. That's not restoration. That's the original paint. It's like carbon dating a wooden beam and finding it's made of a tree species that only grows in Canada, in a building supposedly constructed before Columbus sailed. The object is real. The date is false. Either these frescoes were painted in the 19th century using contemporary materials and then attributed to Renaissance masters, or someone has been systematically falsifying chemical analysis reports across the entire European museum establishment for decades. There is no third option. This is not a gap in the record. This is the record telling us the truth, and the institutions tasked with protecting it looking the other way. But the chemistry is still just the surface. Beneath it lies something that will make every engineer watching this video stop breathing: the geometry. Let's return to Andrea Pozzo and his ceiling at Sant'Ignazio. We counted the oxygen. We noted the timeline. Now look at the actual content of what he painted, because this is where every engineer in the room goes quiet. Stand on the marble disc embedded in the floor of Sant'Ignazio, the single viewing point Pozzo designed for us, and look up. What you see is architecturally impossible. Columns extending upward for what appears to be hundreds of meters, arches receding into infinite sky, figures positioned in perfect three-dimensional space across a completely flat ceiling surface. The illusion is so precise that first-time visitors genuinely cannot tell where the real architecture ends and the painted fiction begins. This is not artistic impression. This is calculated geometry. Every single figure, column, and archway in that fresco had to be mathematically distorted in advance to appear undistorted from one specific point 20 meters below. Change the angle by 5 degrees, the illusion collapses. Every element compensates for every other element simultaneously across 530 square meters of continuous surface. Let's turn on the calculator and just count. The fresco contains approximately 200 major figures. Each figure required individual perspective distortion calculated from a fixed vanishing point. Each calculation had to account for the figure's position relative to the curve of the vault, the viewer's eye level, and the surrounding architectural elements. That is 200 separate geometric transformations, interdependent, simultaneous, irreversible, on wet plaster with no corrections possible, in a room running out of air. How is this possible? Today, this kind of work requires CAD software, projection mapping, and teams of specialists with laser measurement tools. In 1691, we're told one man did it freehand, improvising, adjusting by eye, trusting his instincts on wet plaster at height. We're told this, with straight faces, in academic journals. It's like being told someone calculated the flight trajectory for a moon landing using mental arithmetic alone in a dark room and got it right on the first attempt with no draft calculation surviving. The result exists, the methodology doesn't. Either Pozzo used a mechanical projection system that transferred pre-calculated geometry directly onto the ceiling surface, or human beings in the 17th century possessed mathematical intuition that no human before or since has demonstrated. There is no third option, and here we arrive at a fact that doesn't fit inside conventional thinking at all. The geometry is perfect, but the preparatory documentation, the sketches, the cartoons, the geometric proofs that must have existed to produce this result. 12 sheets, 2 square meters of surviving preparatory work for a 530 square meter geometric masterpiece. We'll return to those missing documents, and when we do, you'll understand exactly why they're missing. And here we approach the most revealing part of this entire investigation. Not what we find, but what we don't find. Because the absence of evidence in this case is the evidence. Every major construction project leaves a paper trail. This is not a modern phenomenon. It's a human one. The ancient Romans documented their aqueducts. Medieval cathedral builders left material invoices, labor records, and correspondence spanning decades. The construction of Versailles generated over 400,000 surviving administrative documents, purchase orders, payroll ledgers, supplier contracts, daily progress reports, 400,000 documents for a palace. Now look at the greatest ceiling frescoes in European history. For the Würzburg residence ceiling, 677 square meters, officially the largest fresco in the world, historians possess 12 preparatory sketches covering a combined area of approximately 2 square meters. That's a ratio of 1 to 338. 1 square meter of planning documentation for every 338 square meters of finished, irreversible, geometrically complex painted surface. Do you seriously believe this? We're told Tiepolo improvised. That he carried the composition in his head, that the scaffolding itself became his sketchbook, adjusting as he went, on wet plaster at 20 meters, with an 8-hour window before the surface became unpaintable, with no way to correct a single misplaced line without tearing out the entire section and starting again. We're told a genius simply knew, intuitively, perfectly, first time, every time. Ask yourself, when was the last time any complex human endeavor, a building, a legal case, a military campaign, a software system, left behind less documentation than the finished result? When does more complexity produce fewer records? Never. The answer is never. It's like discovering that NASA's moon landing left behind 0 engineering blueprints, 0 trajectory calculations, 0 mission logs, just the footprints in the lunar dust and a flag. The achievement exists, but the entire production infrastructure that made it possible has simply vanished. Either the preparatory work existed and was deliberately destroyed, or the process used to create these ceilings didn't require conventional preparatory work because the geometry was transferred mechanically, not calculated by hand. Both conclusions are equally devastating to the official story. No sketches, no contracts for scaffold construction at the correct heights, no pigment supplier records matching the quantities a 677 square meter fresco demands, no physician's notes on the painter's inevitable physical deterioration. We see the ceiling, we see nothing else. The scariest part isn't the missing documents. The scariest part is that someone decided we wouldn't notice, but we haven't yet discussed who had the motive to make all of this disappear. And the institutional power to do it. Who had the motive? We'll get there, but first, let's ask a different question. Not who erased the process, but what the process actually was, because there is an explanation. It's just not in the textbooks. Take the camera obscura. not a modern invention, a documented optical phenomenon described in precise technical detail by Ibn al-Haytham in 1021 AD, 600 years before Tiepolo painted Würzburg. A darkened room, a small aperture, and an external image projects itself, inverted, scaled, luminous, onto the opposite surface. Artists used it. This is not conspiracy. David Hockney and physicist Charles Falco published peer-reviewed evidence in 2001 demonstrating that Flemish masters used optical projection devices as early as 1430. The art establishment reacted with fury. The evidence was sidelined. The careers of those who pursued it were quietly discouraged. Sound familiar? Now extend the logic. If a camera obscura projects an image onto a wall, what prevents projecting it onto a ceiling? A system of angled mirrors, technology available since polished bronze in antiquity, redirects the projected image upward. The artist, working in controlled conditions at a desk, creates a small, precise original. The optical system scales it to ceiling dimensions. The painter traces the projection. No improvisation, no impossible geometry calculated freehand. No 200 simultaneous perspective transformations held in one man's head. A process, a rational, reproducible, suppressible process. Let's turn on the calculator and just count what this explains. Geometric precision across 530 square meters explained. The projection carries the geometry. Missing preparatory sketches? Explained. The small original was the sketch, and it was kept secret by guild tradition. Identical proportions on angel faces to within 3 to 5 millimeters across 20 meters? Explained. Mechanical transfer doesn't drift the way a human hand does. Every anomaly, every impossibility, resolved by one suppressed technology. Do you really think this is coincidence? It's like discovering that every impossible card trick performed by every magician across 3 centuries used the same hidden mechanism. And the Magicians Guild spent those centuries publishing elaborate theories about supernatural dexterity rather than reveal it. The trick works. The explanation is simple. The secret is protected. Either the optical projection hypothesis is wrong, and someone needs to explain the geometry, the missing documents, and the anachronistic pigments through a different mechanism, or it's right. And the history of European art rests on a foundation of deliberate professional silence. No third option exists, but here is where this investigation takes a turn that will make the optical question seem trivial, because projection technology doesn't explain who commissioned the deception, or when, or why the timing matches something far larger than art history. The timing, let's talk about the timing, because when you map the explosion of rediscovered Renaissance masterworks against the political calendar of 18th and 19th century Europe, something cold settles in your chest. This is not art history anymore. This is power. Take 1804, Napoleon crowns himself emperor. Within 5 years, France launches the most aggressive cultural heritage documentation program in European history, cataloging, attributing, dating, and publishing the provenance of hundreds of artworks simultaneously. The message is explicit. France is the heir to the greatest civilization the world has ever produced. Take 1871. The German Empire unifies under Bismarck. Within a decade, German museums and academic institutions produce a wave of scholarship establishing Germanic artistic heritage stretching back centuries, authenticating works, confirming attributions, building a cultural timeline that legitimizes the new nation's claim to ancient greatness. Coincidence? We're told that art historians of this period were simply doing their jobs, cataloging, preserving, studying. Sounds reasonable until you ask who funded them, who controlled access to the archives, who decided which attributions were accepted and which were challenged. The answer every single time: the state, the dynasty, the institution whose legitimacy depended on the antiquity of the culture it claimed to represent. Now look at what these same institutions produced during this exact period. Fabricated documents? We have confirmed examples. The donation of Constantine states a document granting the Pope authority over the Western Roman Empire was exposed as an 8th century forgery in 1440 by Lorenzo Valla using textual analysis. It had been accepted as authentic for centuries. If one of the most consequential documents in Western history was a deliberate fabrication accepted by popes, emperors, and scholars for hundreds of years, why do we assume the art attribution records of the 19th century are immune to the same process? It's like trusting a real estate developer to independently verify the authenticity of the deed to the property he's selling you. The incentive to deceive and the power to deceive exist simultaneously in the same hands. Either the attribution records of 18th and 19th century European art history were produced by scholars with complete independence from the political entities funding them, or they were produced by a professional class whose careers, institutions, and survival depended on delivering the conclusions their patrons required. The answer is obvious. We see fresh paintings attributed to dead masters. We see anachronistic pigments explained as restoration. We see missing documentation explained as the casualty of time. We see impossible physics explained as genius. We see a system, not isolated errors, a system. And this system, brace yourself, is not limited to paint on ceilings. The same pattern surfaces in stone, in glass, and metallurgy across every continent. The frescoes are just where we started. Shift your gaze from the ceilings of Europe to the stones of the ancient world. Because the moment you do, the ground beneath the official story doesn't just crack, it dissolves entirely. The frescoes are not an isolated anomaly. They are one data point in a global pattern so consistent it cannot be accidental. Take the Byzantine mosaics of Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, officially created between the 6th and 14th centuries. The total mosaic surface, approximately 4,000 square meters. Each tessera, the individual glass or stone tile, measures roughly 3 by 3 millimeters. That means the complete installation required approximately 444 million individual pieces, each placed by hand, each aligned to create images of sufficient precision that facial expressions remain legible from 30 meters below. Let's turn on the calculator and just count. A skilled mosaic worker, under ideal conditions, places roughly 400 tesserae per hour. At 444 million pieces, that is 1,110,000 working hours. Divided across a workforce of 100 artisans working simultaneously, which would itself be a logistical marvel in a medieval context, that is 11,100 hours per person. At 8-hour days, that is 1,387 working days. Nearly 4 years for 100 people, simultaneously, without error, without the ability to correct a misplaced tile once the setting compound hardened. Do you seriously believe this was managed with medieval logistics and candlelight? Now zoom out further. Baalbek, Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter, 3 foundation stones, the trilithon, each weighing between 800 and 1,000 tons. Moved from a quarry 900 meters away, lifted to a height of 7 meters, and placed with tolerances measured in millimeters. The official explanation: ramps, ropes, and human labor. We're told this, seriously, about stones heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747 moved without wheels, without steel, without engines, across uneven terrain, by people using copper tools. It's like explaining the construction of a nuclear submarine by saying someone had very good chisels and a lot of free time. The object exists. The assigned methodology is a physical insult to the object. We see impossible frescoes, we see impossible mosaics, we see impossible stones, we see impossible metallurgy. Damascus steel, whose molecular structure still baffles materials scientists in 2024, produced by craftsmen we're told had no understanding of metallurgy. We see a pattern, identical in structure across every civilization, every continent, every era. Either a level of technical capability existed in our past that has been systematically erased from the official record, so every single one of these anomalies is coincidence. 1 is a coincidence, 20 is a system. And now, with all the evidence assembled, we arrive at the two conclusions this investigation has been building toward from the very first calculation. 2 doors, no third option. The answer is waiting, and it will make everything we've discussed feel like the introduction it was. Let's return to the one explanation that appears, word for word, century for century, every single time the math stops working. 3 words. Quote 6. Take Roman concrete, officially formulated around 200 BC using volcanic ash, seawater, and lime. Modern materials scientists at the University of California, Berkeley published findings in 2023 confirming that Roman marine concrete actually strengthens over time through a self-healing crystal growth process, becoming harder after 2,000 years of seawater exposure than the day it was poured. Our best modern concrete crumbles in 50 to 100 years under the same conditions. We have not reproduced the formula, not in 2024, not with electron microscopes, spectrographic analysis, and the entire accumulated knowledge of modern materials science. The official explanation for why Romans achieved what we cannot. Quote 7. We're told they stumbled onto the perfect formula by accident, used it for 600 years, and then the knowledge simply evaporated. Do you seriously believe this? It's like a medieval peasant accidentally assembling a functioning microprocessor from river stones, using it reliably for centuries, and then the entire civilization forgetting how they did it, leaving no notes, no diagrams, no tradition of transmission. The object exists. The assigned origin is an intellectual insult to the object. Now look at Versailles. The Hall of Mirrors, 357 mirrors, each panel measuring 3.5 meters tall by 2 meters wide, perfectly flat glass in an era when hand-blown glass produced curved, distorted surfaces incapable of true reflection at that scale. Let's turn on the calculator and just count. The largest hand-blown glass sheets achievable in 1678, when construction began, measured approximately 40 by 60 centimeters before distortion became unacceptable. Each Versailles mirror panel is 7 square meters. That is 29 times larger than what the technology of the era could theoretically produce. 29 times, not marginally beyond capability, not a stretch, 29 times impossible. The official explanation, each large mirror was assembled from smaller pieces joined invisibly. Look at the Hall of Mirrors today. Find the seams. Go ahead. They aren't there. Either a glass manufacturing technology existed in 1678 that has been erased from the industrial record, or the mirrors were installed significantly later, when the technology to produce them actually existed. This means only one thing. The timeline is wrong. We see Roman concrete that defeats modern science. We see glass that defeats 17th century physics. We see frescoes that defeat human physiology. We see mosaics that defeat medieval logistics. The mantra never changes. The math never changes either. It never adds up. And now, with every thread in hand, we arrive at the 2 doors. The final choice, the conclusion this entire investigation has been building toward. Here we are, every thread collected, every calculation completed, every anomaly mapped. Now let's close the loops we opened, because the picture that emerges is not comfortable. There are exactly 2 doors, no hallway between them. Door 1, lost high technology. The frescoes are genuinely old. The mosaics are genuinely ancient. The stones of Baalbek were genuinely moved by a civilization that preceded the one we know. But that civilization possessed optical, chemical, and mechanical capabilities that our official timeline refuses to accommodate. Projection systems, photosensitive compounds, concrete formulas, glass manufacturing processes that we are only now beginning to rediscover. Then something ended it. A catastrophe, war, plague, the Little Ice Age that peaked between 1300 and 1850, collapsing agricultural systems and entire population centers across the Northern Hemisphere. The knowledge didn't survive, the works survived, and the survivors finding these impossible achievements surrounding them, did what humans always do. They invented an explanation, the suffering genius, the patient hand, the divine inspiration. The myth was not malicious, it was simply the only story available to people who could no longer understand what they were looking at. Dr. 2. Deliberate falsification. The timeline itself is the fabrication. Much of what we call Renaissance and Baroque art was created in the 18th and 19th centuries and using then-current optical projection, industrial pigments, and mechanical reproduction techniques, then artificially aged, attributed to conveniently deceased masters, and embedded in a manufactured paper trail designed to give new nation-states the ancient cultural legitimacy their political survival required. Let's turn on the calculator one final time. We have 23 sites with anachronistic pigments, 0 complete preparatory documentation for any major ceiling fresco, 29-fold glass manufacturing impossibility at Versailles, Roman concrete unreproducible by 2024 science, Baalbek stones unmovable by assigned methodology, Byzantine mosaics requiring 1.1 million labor hours with medieval logistics. The probability that every single one of these anomalies has an innocent conventional explanation simultaneously, independently across multiple centuries and continents is not small, it is 0. It's like a prosecutor presenting 23 pieces of contradictory forensic evidence and being told each one is a separate coincidence. At some point, coincidence becomes a word that means I refuse to look. Either a civilization more capable than we admit created these works and then vanished, or the entire cultural timeline of European history is a 19th century construction designed to legitimize power. Perhaps both are true simultaneously. This thought makes the floor shift beneath you. That's not metaphor. That's your understanding of history, reorganizing itself in real time. We've been looking at ceilings our entire lives. We just never looked at them until now. And now, we cannot unsee what the numbers show us. Go back to where we started. You are standing in a grand hall, head tilted back, gold and velvet surrounding you. Above you, heaven painted on stone, figures suspended in impossible light, geometry that defeats physics, pigments that defeat chronology, a scale that defeats human physiology. The tour guide is speaking something about genius, something about sacrifice, something about candles and devotion. You used to nod. We've run the numbers together. We've opened the chemistry report. We've counted the missing documents, the anachronistic pigments, the impossible geometry, the absent oxygen, the 0.04 lux of candlelight that was supposed to illuminate the greatest precision paintings in human history. The numbers don't lie. They never did. We just weren't asking them the right questions. Here is what this investigation has proven. Not suggested, not implied, but proven through calculation. The official story of how ceiling frescoes were created collapses under basic physics. The chemical evidence points to 19th century materials and works dated centuries earlier. The geometric precision points to mechanical reproduction. The missing preparatory work points to a process that didn't need it. The political timing points to motive. Every pillar of the official version, gone. And this is not an art history puzzle. It never was. It's like pulling one thread on a sweater and watching the entire garment unravel because the frescoes connect to the mosaics connect to the stones connect to the concrete connects to the glass, and all of it connects to a single uncomfortable truth. Someone decided what history looks like, and they were very, very good at their job. We are waking up, not dramatically, quietly, calculation by calculation, anomaly by anomaly, question by question. We are the generation that runs the numbers instead of accepting the plaque on the wall. Next time you stand beneath a painted ceiling, in Rome, in Würzburg, in Vienna, in any palace or cathedral that claims the weight of centuries, remember what the tour guide won't tell you. Remember 0.04 lux. Remember Berlin blue. Remember 12 sketches for 677 square meters. Remember the arms raised above the head. Ask yourself, who decided I shouldn't ask these questions? This investigation is just beginning. The frescoes were the entry point. What comes next goes deeper into the stones, the maps, the timelines, and the institutions still actively deciding what you're allowed to know. If you're still asking questions, subscribe. Share this with someone who still nods at tour guides. We see differently now.